Disclaimer: this story is a fictionalized account inspired by true events. Names, characters, and situations have been changed to protect privacy. The content deals with sensitive themes such as family betrayal and infidelity, and may be distressing to some readers. Reader discretion is advised. I grew up in a household that, on the surface, looked like any other normal family. I was a teenager when my mother remarried, bringing a new man into our lives, my stepfather. At first, I didn't think much of it. He seemed kind enough, always smiling, trying to make me feel comfortable. In a way, I wanted to trust him because I knew my mother deserved happiness after everything she'd been through. The house had a different energy when he moved in. My mom was lighter, happier, and for a long time, I believed everything would be okay. My stepfather worked long hours but would always make time for us, or so it seemed. We shared dinners, holiday celebrations, and little moments that made me think, maybe this was the start of something good. But deep down, I never fully understood him. He was polite but distant, and sometimes I caught him staring off into space, like something was weighing on him. I told myself it was nothing, just stress from work or life, but looking back, it was probably the first sign of what was to come. I remember feeling both hopeful and hesitant about having a new man in the family. I wanted to like him, wanted to believe he could be a positive figure in my life, but something about his smiles never reached his eyes. Still, we kept up appearances. Mom seemed happy, and that was enough for me. During those early months, I tried to build a connection, asking about his work or sharing stories about my day. He'd listen but rarely opened up about himself. There was a wall between us, but I didn't push. I thought maybe that was just who he was. Little did I know, beneath the surface of those everyday moments, something was brewing, something I would never forget, something that would change everything I thought I knew about my family, trust, and love. At first, the changes were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. But after a while, I began to notice small things about my stepfather that didn't sit right with me. He started coming home later than usual, sometimes saying he had extra work, other times just brushing it off without explanation. I'd hear his phone buzz in the middle of the night, and he'd quickly silence it or move to another room to take the call. His behavior wasn't like before. The warmth I once thought he had seemed to be slipping away. He grew more secretive, locking his phone when I was nearby, avoiding eye contact, and getting defensive if I asked simple questions. It was strange because my mother never seemed to suspect anything. She trusted him completely, and that made it harder for me to voice my worries. I found myself watching him more closely, trying to piece together the puzzle. Sometimes, I'd catch him texting someone late at night, smiling softly or laughing quietly, reactions I had never seen before. It wasn't the way he interacted with our family at all. I felt like an outsider, like there was this secret world he was a part of that I couldn't reach. One afternoon, I noticed that he would disappear for short periods during the day when my mom was out. He'd say he was running errands, but the pattern was too consistent to be a coincidence. My curiosity grew, but so did my hesitation. What if I was just imagining things? What if I was reading too much into it? Despite my doubts, a small voice inside me whispered that something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that my stepfather was hiding something important. It was painful to think about, but I started to question the very foundation of the family we were trying to build. I wanted to confront him but feared the consequences. Would my mom believe me? Would it ruin what little peace we had? So instead, I kept quiet and watched, hoping for a sign that would either confirm or ease my fears. But deep down, I knew that the normal family life I'd hoped for was starting to unravel, and I wasn't ready for the truth I was about to discover. The day I first truly suspected my stepfather was cheating is etched in my memory like a scar. It was a regular evening, and I was in the living room finishing some homework while my mom was out running errands. My stepfather was supposed to be in his study, but the sound of muffled voices caught my attention. Curious, I moved quietly closer to the door and overheard his phone ringing. He answered, and the voice on the other end wasn't the usual colleague or family member. It was a woman's voice, soft, familiar, and oddly affectionate. They spoke in hushed tones, laughing quietly, and he called her by a name I didn't recognize. My heart sank. I felt a mixture of disbelief and pain swirl inside me. Was this the moment I had feared? I wasn't sure what to do next. I debated whether to leave it alone or try to find out more. In the days that followed, my suspicions only grew stronger. I noticed he was even more secretive, often texting with that same woman, his face lighting up when he thought no one was watching. I started to pay closer attention to his messages, but he was careful, deleting conversations quickly or switching screens when I entered the room. One afternoon, I found a small piece of paper tucked between the pages of a book in the living room. It had a name and a number on it, the same name I'd heard in the phone call. That was the proof I hadn't dared to hope for. The shock was overwhelming. How could he do this to my mom? To our family? I felt betrayed not only by him but also by the false sense of security I'd held onto for so long. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? What did my mother know? And worst of all, was I supposed to keep this secret? Despite the pain, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. Something inside me urged me to confront the reality, but fear held me back. I wasn't ready to shatter my mother's happiness, and yet, the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. This was the moment everything began to change, the moment I realized that the man I had tried to trust was hiding a part of his life from all of us. A part that would leave scars none of us could forget. After that phone call and finding the note, I couldn't stop thinking about what my stepfather was hiding. The doubts swirling in my mind demanded answers, and I realized I had to dig deeper. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore, it was about protecting my family and uncovering the truth. I started watching his habits more carefully, noting when he left the house and where he might be going. I noticed he had a pattern of leaving around the same time every weeknight, saying he had meetings or appointments, but it never added up. His stories felt rehearsed, and every excuse seemed thinner than the last. One evening, when I was sure no one was home, I decided to check his phone. It was locked, but I knew some of his usual passwords. Heart pounding, I unlocked it and scanned through his messages. There were deleted conversations and hidden chats with the woman I had overheard. The messages were filled with affectionate words, secret plans, and promises that no husband should be making to anyone but his wife. It hurt more than I could say. It was like my whole world was cracking apart piece by piece. I wasn't just betrayed by my stepfather, I was betrayed by the image of what I thought a family should be. I struggled to keep my emotions in check. I felt anger, sadness, confusion, and guilt all at once. Was I supposed to tell my mother? Confront my stepfather? What if this destroyed her completely? I felt trapped between wanting to protect her and needing to expose the truth. The worst part was the silence. I couldn't share my pain with anyone because the secret was too heavy to bear aloud. It was my burden to carry, and every day it grew heavier. Yet, despite the growing evidence, a small part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wanted to believe my stepfather could change, that this was just a mistake, something that could be fixed. But deep down, I knew I was fooling myself. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. My stepfather had been living a double life, a life filled with lies and betrayal, and nothing would ever be the same again. It happened on a day I wish I could erase from my memory. I had been carrying the weight of my suspicions for weeks, and the need to know the full truth overwhelmed me. One afternoon, when my mom was out shopping, I decided to follow my stepfather secretly, hoping to catch a glimpse of where he was really going. I watched from a distance as he pulled into a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place I'd never been to before. I waited, heart pounding, as he got out of the car and entered the building. I hesitated for a moment, then gathered my courage and went inside. The cafe was quiet, but I spotted him sitting at a corner table with a woman, the same woman from the phone call, the same name I'd seen on that little slip of paper. They were holding hands, smiling, and whispering to each other like no one else existed. It was a moment frozen in time, and I felt like my chest was breaking. They didn't see me at first. I wanted to scream, to tell my mom, to make him stop. But I just stood there, tears threatening to fall. The man who had tried to be my stepfather was nothing but a stranger with a secret life, a life of betrayal and lies. When he finally noticed me, his face changed. Shock, guilt, and something like shame flickered across his eyes. I couldn't find the words to confront him. I turned and left, the image burned into my mind. That day shattered the illusion of family I had clung to for so long. It wasn't just about infidelity, it was about the trust that had been completely broken. I felt lost, angry, and more alone than ever. How could someone you tried to love do something so cruel? I kept asking myself. And more importantly, what would come next? The day I finally confronted my stepfather was one of the hardest moments of my life. I couldn't keep living with the secret, pretending everything was fine when my heart was breaking inside. After the cafe incident, I knew there was no turning back, the truth had to come out. I waited until my mom was home, the air heavy with tension. I sat down with him and, voice trembling, told him everything I had seen and discovered. I expected anger or denial, but instead, he was silent for a long moment, then his face crumbled. He admitted to the affair. Not just some fleeting mistake, but a relationship that had been going on for months. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I could hardly believe the man who had tried to be part of my family had lied to all of us so completely. My mom was devastated when I told her. She cried, screamed, and begged for answers. The house felt like it was breaking apart. There were heated arguments, tears, and long nights filled with silence and pain. The stepfather I had once tried to trust became a stranger in our home. He promised to change, to fix what he had broken, but the damage was deep. Trust, once shattered, is hard to rebuild. My mom wrestled with forgiveness, torn between love and heartbreak. I felt caught in the middle, angry at him but also wishing things could go back to how they were. The fallout affected everyone differently. My relationship with my stepfather became cold and distant. I couldn't look at him the same way again. My mom withdrew, and I felt like I had lost not just a father figure, but part of my family's foundation. It was clear that nothing would ever be the same. The truth had come out, and now we had to decide whether to rebuild or walk away. The wounds were fresh, and healing would take time, but that moment of confrontation marked the beginning of a painful, complicated journey for all of us. After the confrontation and the initial storm of emotions, our family entered a strange, quiet period. The house that once felt warm and full of life was now heavy with tension and unspoken words. My mom tried to hold things together, but the hurt was evident in every glance and every silence between us. I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal wasn't just about my stepfather's actions, it was about trust shattered and innocence lost. I realized how fragile relationships can be, how easily love can be broken by lies. It was hard to watch my mother struggle. She had believed in him, trusted him completely, and to see her heart break was devastating. She went through moments of anger, sadness, and even denial, as if trying to convince herself the pain wasn't real. For me, the experience taught me a painful lesson about people and truth. It showed me that sometimes, those closest to us can hurt us the most, not because they want to, but because they make mistakes. I also learned the importance of honesty, even when it's difficult. Our family started attending counseling, trying to work through the tangled emotions and rebuild some sense of normalcy. It wasn't easy, there were days filled with tears and arguments, but slowly, the healing process began. I also found myself growing stronger. The experience forced me to confront my feelings head-on and made me realize that I couldn't control what others did, only how I responded. I chose to protect my own peace and find hope for the future, even when it seemed impossible. Though the scars remain, this chapter in my life helped me grow in ways I never expected. It taught me resilience and the complicated nature of forgiveness, showing that even when trust is broken, it's possible to find a way forward. Time didn't magically erase the pain, but it gave us space to breathe and slowly heal. Life after betrayal was complicated, there was no quick fix, no instant forgiveness. But I realized that holding on to anger and hurt would only trap me in the past. I started focusing on myself, my goals, and what I wanted from life. I leaned on close friends, found new passions, and began to rebuild my sense of trust, not in others, but in myself. I learned that healing isn't about forgetting, but about accepting what happened and choosing to move forward despite it. My relationship with my mom grew stronger as we supported each other. We talked openly about our feelings, fears, and hopes. Though the wound from my stepfather's betrayal still lingered, we found ways to find peace in each other's company. As for my stepfather, our relationship never fully recovered. The betrayal was too deep, and sometimes love isn't enough to fix everything. But I learned to accept that some people aren't meant to stay in our lives forever. Looking back, I understand now that what he did was something I'll never forget, but it doesn't have to define me. That painful chapter taught me about the complexity of human nature, the fragility of trust, and the strength it takes to heal. I'm moving forward with hope and courage, knowing that even in the darkest moments, there is a chance to find light again. Life goes on, and so will I, stronger, wiser, and ready to create my own story. 14.